It was the last week of August, and the summer camp had officially ended 2 days ago. Most of the campers had already left, their buses rolling out under heavy clouds. Only I stayed behind, having signed up for a short leadership training session for older teens. It was something the camp had started offering recently, and I figured it would look good on college applications. I didn't expect to be the only one who signed up. The staff had started packing up early that morning. By noon, the main office was locked, the dining hall closed, and most of the cabins were empty. The only people left were me and Mark, one of the senior trainers. He was in his 40s, a quiet guy who kept to himself. I hadn't spoken much with him during the summer, but he seemed all right. When I asked about the rest of the leadership group, he just said the others had canceled due to the storm warning and that I'd be doing a solo session. I didn't think much of it at the time. Around mid-afternoon, the rain started coming down hard. We were supposed to start some trust-building exercises and solo problem-solving tasks, but Mark told me we'd hold off until the weather cleared. He gave me a lantern, a walkie-talkie, and sent me to stay in Cabin 9, an old wooden building farther out, away from the main camp area. He said I should rest and keep a journal of my thoughts, just part of the program. It felt strange, being that far out by myself, but I didn't want to seem scared. The cabin was cold and smelled like wet wood. I set up my sleeping bag on one of the bunks and wrote in the journal Mark gave me. By evening, the rain hadn't let up. I tried the walkie-talkie a few times, but no one answered. I figured maybe the storm was messing with the signal. I heated a small can of soup over the portable stove and settled in. The silence outside was thick, interrupted only by the occasional creak of the trees. I tried to sleep, but it was hard. Around midnight, I woke up to a soft knock on the door. I sat up, alert. No one should be out here this late, especially not in the rain. I stayed quiet. A minute passed, and I heard the knock again. I slipped out of the sleeping bag and walked to the door, peeking through the small window. There was no one outside. I opened the door a crack and looked around with the lantern. Nothing. Just the dark woods and rain. I told myself it was probably a tree branch or an animal. I locked the door and went back to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how far I was from the main camp, how no one knew I was out here except Mark. Around 2 in the morning, I heard static from the walkie-talkie. I picked it up and pressed the button. Hello? Mark? There was no response, just more static. Then it went silent again. I turned it off. At some point, I must have fallen asleep because I woke up to a faint noise outside, like footsteps. I sat up slowly and listened. There it was again, moving around the cabin. My first thought was that it was Mark checking on me, but then I remembered he said he'd be in the main lodge for the night. I stayed still, barely breathing. The footsteps stopped. I crept to the window and lifted the curtain a bit. What I saw made my stomach twist. A man was standing near the trees. I backed away from the window and sat down on the bunk, unsure of what to do. I didn't have cell service out here, and the walkie-talkie hadn't worked. I waited, hoping he'd just go away. But 10 minutes later, I heard the sound of the front porch steps creaking. Whoever he was coming closer. I locked the door and moved the small dresser in front of it. I grabbed the lantern and turned it off, sitting in the dark. The doorknob turned slowly, then stopped. Silence. Then a light knock. "Ethan?" It was Mark's voice. I didn't answer. "It's me, Mark. Open the door. I just want to check on you." I stood frozen. Something was wrong with the way he said it. His tone was off, too calm, too flat. I moved quietly to the window again and looked out. The man was still there by the trees. So who was at the door? I stayed silent. After a few minutes, the knocking stopped. I heard footsteps walking away, and then nothing. I waited a long time before I moved again. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. When the sun finally came up, I opened the door and stepped outside. The air was cold and damp. There were 2 sets of footprints in the mud, one leading from the woods to the porch, and one going back. I ran to the main lodge. It was empty. No one was there. The office was locked, and Mark's truck was gone. Confused, I broke the small window next to the door and climbed inside. Everything looked abandoned. I found a first aid kit, and some granola bars, and finally a charging station for radios. I plugged in the walkie-talkie and waited. After half an hour, it crackled to life. I pressed the button. "Hello, anyone?" A voice answered. "Who is this?" "Ethan. I'm at Camp Hollow Pines. I stayed behind for leadership training. Is Mark there?" There was a pause. "Mark? He doesn't work there anymore. He left a year ago. That program was canceled." My mouth went dry. "But he was here. He gave me the walkie. He sent me to Cabin 9. Another pause. "Stay where you are. We're sending someone now." That was 3 hours ago. I'm still here, waiting. I don't know who that man was in the woods or who was pretending to be Mark, but I know I'm not staying another night. Hi friends, my channel is stuck and I need your help. Please watch my full videos, like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends to unfreeze it. Your support means everything and will help me bring you more chilling stories. My name is Ethan. I was 19 when this happened. My parents had gone away for a weekend trip, something they rarely did, but I had insisted I could handle being alone. I wasn't a kid anymore, and we lived in a quiet, safe neighborhood. The kind of place where you don't lock every window or double-check the doors. That weekend, I realized how false that sense of safety really was. It started on a Friday evening. A thunderstorm had rolled in around 7. By 8, the power had gone out. I didn't panic. I lit a couple of candles, made sure my phone was charged, and settled in with some snacks. I figured I'd just wait out the storm and go to bed early. The silence was heavy, broken only by distant thunder. Our house didn't usually feel big, but that night it did. Every creak sounded louder, every shadow darker. I tried not to think about it. Around 10, I went to the kitchen to grab another bottle of water. As I stepped into the hallway, I noticed something odd. The front doormat was slightly off-center. I remembered straightening it earlier when I closed the door. I brushed it off, thinking maybe I just bumped it without realizing. But then I noticed the faint outline of a wet shoe print on the tile. One print. No others. Just one. My stomach tightened a bit. Still, I tried to stay calm. I told myself it could have been from earlier. Maybe I didn't clean the floor properly. I walked to the front door and made sure it was locked. It was. Then I remembered the backup key. We kept it under a potted plant just outside the door, hidden beneath some pebbles. It was an old habit, just in case any of us got locked out. I opened the door again, barefoot, stepping into the rain. The plant was knocked over. The pebbles were scattered. The key was gone. My hands felt cold, not from the rain, but from something else. Fear, maybe. Real fear. I locked the door, this time twisting the deadbolt twice, and turned off the porch light. I stood still in the hallway, listening. No sounds, nothing. I went back to the living room and sat on the couch, holding my phone tight. I checked the front and back door cameras on the app, but of course the Wi-Fi was down with the power. The cameras didn't work without it. The whole house was dark except for the soft orange glow of a few candles. That's when I heard it. Something fell in the kitchen. I froze, listening. No footsteps followed, no movement, just that single sound. I got up slowly, trying not to make the floor creak. I moved toward the kitchen, heart heavy, hands shaking. I peeked around the corner. Everything looked the same, except for a glass cup on the floor. It had rolled to the edge of the kitchen table. I hadn't used it. I hadn't even been near it. I picked it up quietly, then checked the back door. Locked. I checked the windows, shut tight. I told myself again that maybe it was just the wind. Maybe I didn't balance the glass properly earlier, but I didn't believe it. My skin felt tight. I didn't feel alone. I backed out of the kitchen and stood in the hallway. That's when I noticed something on the TV screen, a faint reflection. Someone tall standing at the far end of the hallway, near my parents' room. I turned quickly, but no one was there. I told myself I was just imagining things, that the candlelight was playing tricks. But I couldn't shake the feeling. I walked toward my parents' room anyway, forcing my feet to move. The door was cracked open. I reached out, pushed it gently. The room was empty. Nothing seemed out of place, but I didn't stay. I closed the door behind me and went back to the living room. I sat down and texted my dad. Hey, someone might have taken the backup key. I'm a little freaked out. He replied a minute later, stay calm, lock every door, call the police if anything else happens. We're coming home first thing in the morning. That helped a little. I double-checked the locks again and went upstairs to my room. I felt safer there with the door shut. I slid my desk in front of it and kept my phone in hand. But I couldn't sleep. I sat on my bed, staring at the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. That's when I saw headlights, a car, pulling into our driveway. I crouched near the window and peeked out. I couldn't see much, but it wasn't my parents' car. It was older, darker, with no lights inside. The engine shut off, but no one got out. I waited. After 2 minutes, the driver's door opened. A man stepped out, holding something, maybe a flashlight or maybe something longer. He walked slowly to the side of the house out of view. I ran downstairs, careful not to trip, and looked through the peephole. Nothing. Then I heard something at the back door, a soft rattle, like someone trying to open it quietly. I moved back, pressing myself against the wall. Then the sound stopped. A minute passed, then 2. Then I heard it again, but this time at the side window. I didn't look. I just ran back to the stairs and crept up to my room. I locked the door, moved the desk tighter against it, and got back to the window. The car was still there. Then I noticed the trunk was open. A second figure stood behind it, shorter than the first. I didn't recognize either of them. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. Nice house. Is it just you tonight? I didn't respond. I blocked the number. I turned off the light and crawled into the corner of my room, keeping low. I stayed there for what felt like hours, listening, waiting, hoping they'd leave. At some point, I must have passed out. When I opened my eyes again, light was starting to come through the window. It was morning. The car was gone. I went downstairs. Everything looked normal, except the front door was unlocked, and the backup key placed neatly on the kitchen table. I never heard them come in. I never saw them leave, but they had been inside. They had walked through the house while I hid. I called the police. They found no fingerprints, no tire marks, nothing. Like it never happened. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And I never stayed in that house alone again. It was a Friday evening when I left the city to visit my grandmother in Kalpur, a village tucked deep inside the hills, far from everything. I hadn't seen her in 3 years. and after my mom insisted she wasn't feeling well lately, I finally decided to make the trip. I left late, around 7 p.m., thinking I'd reach by 10, but I underestimated how hard it would be to drive through unfamiliar forest roads at night. My phone had already lost signal an hour ago, and the map had stopped updating, so I was relying on memory and a few road signs. The road had turned narrow and rough, surrounded by dense trees on both sides. The streetlights had disappeared long ago. My headlights were the only thing cutting through the darkness. It felt like I had entered another world. Every now and then I'd see signs pointing toward Cowper, but they looked old, almost hand-painted. I didn't think much of it. Villages often had outdated infrastructure. What did start to bother me was the silence. No other vehicles, no distant lights, no animals, not even the sound of crickets. About 20 minutes into the last stretch, I saw something ahead on the road. I slowed down and realized a big tree had fallen across the path. It was thick and wide, blocking the entire road. I got out and walked up to it, trying to see if I could shift it or drive around, but there was no way. I thought maybe if I reversed and took another path. I remembered seeing a turn about 5 minutes back. I could reroute through the village farmland road. I got back into the car, put it in reverse, and slowly started backing up. Just as I was turning slightly to the side, there was a loud cracking sound behind me. I hit the brakes immediately. Another tree had just fallen right behind my car. It hadn't been windy. There was no storm. But two trees, one in front and one behind, now blocked me completely. I sat still for a second, trying to process it. It didn't feel natural. Something was wrong. I got out and shone my flashlight around. I couldn't see anyone. No voices, no rustling, just stillness. I stayed in the car for a while, debating what to do. I tried calling someone, but as expected, there was no network. My battery was also at 30%. I didn't want to waste it by leaving the flashlight on too long. I decided to wait, hoping maybe a passerby or local would show up. 15 minutes passed. Nothing. Then from the edge of the trees on my left, I saw a light moving. A dim, slow-moving beam, like a torch. It was coming toward the road. As it got closer, I saw a figure. A tall man with something wrapped around his face, like cloth or bandages. Only his eyes were visible, glowing faintly in the light. He didn't say anything at first, just walked toward me with slow, uneven steps. I stayed near my car and asked loudly, "Hello? Are you from the village? The road is blocked. Can you help?" He didn't answer. He stopped about 20 feet from me and lifted the flashlight to his face. It flickered. Then, finally, he said in a low, scratchy voice, "You cannot go forward. Tree has fallen. Dangerous night." I asked him if he could help me move it or if he had any tools. He didn't respond to that, just turned slowly and pointed into the forest, saying, "Shortcut to Kalpur, this way." Everything in me said not to follow him, but I didn't want to spend the night in my car either. I hesitated, then asked, "How far is it?" He said, "Not far. Come now, before more trees fall." His tone was strange, like he was repeating words he had memorized. I told him I'd grab my backpack first. He nodded and stood still. I slowly reached into my car, grabbed my flashlight and bag, and quietly slipped my camping knife into my pocket. I wasn't planning to use it, but I didn't trust this man. We walked into the forest, the man staying a few steps ahead. The trail was barely visible, almost like it wasn't meant for walking. No signboards, no clear path. He kept moving without speaking, only pausing when he thought I was falling behind. After about 10 minutes, I noticed something strange. We weren't heading downhill or toward any lights. In fact, I saw no signs of a village nearby. The only light was his torch and mine. Then I saw something that made me stop, a torn slipper lying on the path. It looked old and dirty, but clearly left behind. I asked him again, "Are you sure this is the way to Kalpur?" He didn't reply. I said it louder. Still no answer. I took a step back. He finally turned to look at me and said, "Too late now, not safe to go back." That's when I noticed his hands. They were covered in dirt, nails broken, and he kept twitching them like he was nervous. I told him I wanted to go back to my car. He didn't argue, just stared for a few seconds, then slowly stepped off the trail and vanished into the trees without another word. I waited, nothing. No sound of footsteps, no rustling. He had just disappeared. I didn't know whether to follow the trail or head back. I decided to return to the road. It took longer than I thought. The forest looked different now. I started seeing strange things. Scraps of cloth, rusted tools, even a broken mobile phone on the ground. My gut told me none of it was accidental. When I finally reached the road again, my car was still there. But now, there were muddy footprints all around it. Not just one set, multiple. And the driver door was slightly open. I froze. I had locked it. I was sure. I walked slowly toward it, heart racing. The inside looked untouched at first, but then I noticed the glove compartment was open and my documents were scattered on the seat. Nothing stolen, just checked. I looked behind me toward the trees. That same flashlight beam appeared again, far away this time, not moving, just glowing from behind a tree, watching. I jumped into the car, locked all doors, and turned the engine. It started. Relief flooded me. I tried reversing again, carefully, slowly. I bumped slightly into the tree behind, then had an idea. If I could push against the tree a little, maybe I could shift it just enough to get a little space on the side. I used the car like a wedge and slowly rocked it back and forth. After some tries, I got about 2 feet of clearance. Not enough to drive straight through, but maybe I could angle the car just right. As I backed up once more, I saw movement in my mirror. 2 figures. One near the tree line, one near the fallen trunk in front. I didn't wait. I gunned the engine and forced the car onto the side, scraping against branches and stones. The car shook violently, but I managed to get around the front tree. Just as I passed it, I saw a shadow run across the road behind me. I didn't look back again. I just drove, headlights on high, eyes on the road, ignoring everything else. I didn't stop until I saw the first proper road sign and houses with lights. I reached Calper almost an hour later. My grandmother was asleep, but when I told her everything, she didn't look surprised. She sat me down and quietly said, "You should have come in the morning. That road, people have gone missing there. We don't use it anymore. Didn't you see the red cloth on the sign? That means danger. Don't take that road again, no matter what." I had no idea what to say. I just nodded. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those rapt faces in the dark, standing still, just watching.